Right. I believe we are live. My sincere apologies. I had a small technical glitch. We've had to recreate the stream, and but we are back. And thank you to the audience for switching over. Yeah, I am very blessed to have an audience like yourselves, but also these amazing guests. We have Osama Dakdok, whom I've met in the past, and who's very well known and highly respected in the apologetics community. Someone who's well known for his incredible knowledge. I've got Paul Sutcliffe, who I've spoken with on many occasions, and he does great work exposing the Sharia. And of course, Saint Murad, who has recently created a new Quran translation, which blew our minds, as you know, and his new insights have really changed people's perceptions of the Quran. And of course, Osama Daktok has also created his own Quran translation, and hopefully we can have a discussion around that. So I'll give a moment for everyone to trickle in. But yeah, we had a very, very busy chat earlier. But yeah, in a few moments, everyone should come back. Hey, Islamic Origins, welcome, Mel. So yeah, Paul Sutcliffe, I will start with you. You're the one who asked, who mentioned that we should have a little discussion about this. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your thoughts about why you wanted to have this particular discussion.
I'm I've been doing work on civilization jihad for a long time and have pretty much been into apologetics for many years. But I got into from civilization jihad, looking at that point, and then discovering exactly what it is that Muslims, what they're trying to do, required me to learn a lot more about Islam than I originally wanted to learn. So I got into this, I would say, backwards. I'm a teacher by trade and I didn't go into the apologetics field. I did study to be a pastor, but no. And then I've been doing a show called Critical Thinking versus Sharia. It's listed on YouTube and Rumble as the Sutlifian Report. And I work
Critical
with Usama
thinking
Dakdok.
versus Sharia. Paul, this shows a lack of belief, a lack of faith, and I believe it marks you as an Islamophobe and potentially a bigot.
Well, if we're asking the questions Muslims are afraid to ask, is what it comes down to. If they know their Sharia more than they know the Quran, is what I am discovering. And I think it's hilarious because I just went to a mosque with Osama. You got to ask him about that trip. So we went
Okay,
to Cleveland and we went to a mosque, and it was clear. This imam, he said he kind of hinted that he inherited the job. And I said to him after all this, I said, "You're the first imam I've ever heard of that didn't have to know Sharia to get the job as an imam." He says, no, I had to know it. And he started quoting me word for word the requirement of, how the mom has to know Sharia. It was word for word right out of Reliance of the Traveler. And I was like, wow, okay. So
right.
I recognize that because that's something we've gone through.
Yeah,
And
let's
I say
pause a
that encounter
moment,
was
Paul, because I want to give the other guests a chance, and we will come back to that. I mean, some interesting points, but yeah. So your focus is the Sharia,
yes.
and yeah, we can definitely raise some of that. And then Usama, I'm very grateful that you're on the channel. It's really nice to have you here to discuss with you. I mean, you're a legend in the community, I believe, and yeah, very well liked, very well respected. So please tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. I was born in Egypt a good 55 years ago, the best months, October and 1969. And I came to America. Actually, I grew up in a Christian home in Egypt. So I got to learn about Islam all the years of my life in school. It's part of our education. And I also have the privilege to be in social study college in Egypt, where we study a couple of years on Sharia, Islamic law concerning marriage and divorce. And then I came to America a good 34 years ago, 33 years ago to be exact, 1991. I don't know what is this, 33 years ago. And that's where for the first time, I was in Carolina, North Carolina. I met with some Muslim men who just happened to be nation of Islam. Is not a true Muslim. Of course, there are some kind of cult from within the cult of Islam. And then I started meeting different Muslims in different parts of this country. And that's where I felt the call of the Lord in my life to start this minister to the Muslim people. For a good 10 years or so, I was doing it in the Arabic language. That is in this internet program is called Pal Talk, where we debated Muslims all over the world. And then
Right.
the last 24 years, I decided to do it full time as a ministry, and that's when I went to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, and I have a couple of degree, a bachelor in Christian education and a master degree in theology. That make me like a professional missionary.
Wow.
And then I decided to go ahead launch this ministry, and I picked up some books of the Quran, because in the English language, I said there's no reason for me to really translate the entire Quran. Somebody translated it before me. There was no point from wasting time to go from Arabic to English. But I was looking for specific verses on specific topics, as I talk about what the Quran teach about Jesus, or what the women in Islam, or jihad, or whatever the topic I was looking for. And I know my Arabic verses by heart, so I go to the English language to copy the translation. Shocking to my bone that not even one accurate verse of all these few books I bought. I kept buying these books until I got maybe 10 copies, and that's when I met with Dr. Moody Adam. And in Florida, actually, I was in a church in Florida, and I met with him, and he have his translation. I got so excited. I said, "Wow, you have your translation?" He said, "No, that's an old translation." I said, "What do you mean old translation?" He said, "This is what it is," but he had some bold statement to it, few bold statement. So I looked at his, I said, "Man, it's still wrong." I said, "Here is a verse, here is what Allah said in the Arabic, here is what you have in your English." I said, "Usama, this is not my English. That's an old copy. After 100 years, you lose your copyright. Anybody can print it, and you can do a little adjustment to it." So he actually challenged me to put the Quran in accurate translation. And I saw this will take me, 4 months or a year. I ended spent literally 4 years working so hard to fix up all the sugar-coated verses of the Quran, or the watered-down verses of the Quran, and we put it in accurate English translation. And it's
I have two questions.
Sure, bro.
Did you use the Hafs translation?
The Arabic one, yes. Hafs is the one we have in Egypt, and that's the one I picked up to translate my Quran, yeah.
And then would you say that the English Qurans, because it seems it's not the Quran, I mean, there's the Bible, but it seems they are the Qurans, plural. Would you say that the English versions we have today are interpretations and not actual translations?
No, it is actually most of a translation, except when it comes to specific verses, and they will play the game of give you the meaning of these words. When in reality, I can open any page, the entire page, word for word, English, Arabic to English, except when it comes to specific verses which makes Islam look bad, or show some falsehood of the doctrine, the ideologies, the teaching of Allah in the Quran. And that's when they somehow play games of covering up the errors by putting the meaning of the Quran. But literally, any translation, if you open Yusuf Ali, Shakir, Bakhtallah, Rashad, whatever translation we have out there, you see they are translating the Quran almost right, except where they have to use deception to deceive the people of the West. Because if they have done like what I have done in my translation, I believe, as we have seen throughout the last 17, 18 years of our ministry, when Muslims read my translation, they leave Islam. If they investigate, not to just jump onto the conclusion that I am lying and I have evil translation, because we just point to the reality of what the Quran actually teaches, not what Muslims want it to be.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me pause a moment. Paul, I just want to come back to you before I go back to Saint Murad. You wanted to convene the panel to discuss this. What did you think was the important pressing issue, and what we want to highlight here today about
I think one of the most fascinating things about what Usama has done is he points out the large number of non-Arabic words. So Saint Murad capitalizes on this, and Usama Dakdok capitalizes on this. I think this is a huge point, and I don't think enough people cover that. And Usama's translation, I tell you, I still consider reading the Quran penance type activity. There's no details in it. It's completely con man language, but I think that this translation, his translation makes it easier. And there's another thing he does, which he's probably not going to talk enough about, but it's the way he divided the chapters up in his little commentaries. I think that make it easier to grasp what's going on.
Right, thank you. And Saint Murad, are you there with us? So you're on mute at the moment.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
So fantastic having you back. I've been following all of you for a long time, and I've had you on twice before. So, Saint Murad, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about your thoughts in terms of what we've just discussed.
Yeah, well, my name is Murad, and I am an ex-Muslim, and I have been an atheist for like 10 years, but now I consider myself a classical theist. So this is my religious conviction at the moment. And I look at Islam from like an outsider view. I try to look at Islam without the standard Islamic narrative whatsoever. So I cast the hadith aside, I cast the interpretations aside, even Sunnah and Shia. I put them aside and I try to reconstruct what actually happened without the Islamic history, because most of these Islamic writings, they come from, if you are lucky, the 10th century. That's like a snippet of Al-Bukhari. And we have a Moroccan scholar who has come to the conclusion by just looking at the manuscripts that Al-Bukhari, you get a complete Bukhari by the time of World War One. This is when you get the complete collection. And this is in a book in Arabic. It's called Sahih al-Bukhari Nihayat Ustura, meaning Sahih al-Bukhari, the end of a myth. Until today, no one has actually debunked this guy. So when you read the outside sources of Islam, you will find that you have a very different Muhammad that may be detached from the Quran altogether. And as you know, I have this theory that the Quran doesn't know Muhammad. He has been shoved in there by the Abbasids, and with time, it kept getting crazier and crazier. So the way I look at things is very different than the usual polemics, you see?
That is, man, that's another mind-blowing statement. And as we know, I mean, that's incredible news, because I know that book is only in Arabic. It has not been, I believe, translated into English, and I believe it is suppressed in its native country. I think he was an Egyptian author, right?
The one I'm talking about is Moroccan.
Moroccan, okay, the end of the myth. Yeah, it's been suppressed there. It's very controversial. It would be great if we can get a translation. But even Bukhari suffers from exactly the same, the hadiths suffer from exactly the same issue as the multiple variants, like the Quran does. These qira'at, they are qira'at of Bukhari as well, which leaves you with these ambiguous and often, occasionally, contradictory hadiths. So thank you very much. Yeah, so Usama, you've got a Quran translation, and Saint Murad has a Quran translation, and translation is, even in the Bible, it's not exact. You have interpretation versus translation. So, there are these questions you have to make depending on whether you go word for word or meaning for meaning or a mixture. But we were having a brief discussion. Do you want to tell us your thoughts on translation, what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and your questions for Saint Murad, and then we can discuss that. But the Quran, as we've seen, is the English versions are clearly not accurate or faithful in many cases. And if you look at the Bridges Quran translation, where they've got the 10 qira'at, you find contradictions. She versus him, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And there are plenty of different between one Arabic Quran and the other. It's amazing when you grow up in Egypt believing what the professor would teach you, that there's only one pure Quran, never been changed, never been corrupted, not even one word, not even one dot. And it is, and some actually come up boldly to lie to say we have it from the days of Osman all the way until today. And the more I study the Quran, the more I'm investigating the words which Muhammad used in the Quran. I found that it's impossible that this is the Osmani Quran, because if that is a work of Osman or the early Muslim followers of Muhammad, we would not have found these 279 non-Arabic words in the Quran, especially with words we Arab know it very well. You go in the Quran, you see the word Jamal, or in the Arabic language, the word Jamal for camel. I mean, you know the Arab buys their camel, and camels are in the Arab world. So what is camel? It's a Jamal. You go to Quran chapter 12, and you see the word Ba'ir, which is a non-Arabic word of Syriac word, which is the word camel. So why we have the word Ba'ir as a non-Arabic word in the story of Joseph in the Quran, when in reality, it's not even an Arabic word. This is just an example. Sometimes Muhammad used words in the Quran. When you look at the English translators, you find that they literally play a game. They use the word money instead of the word dirhams. Well, what is dirham? It is the money was used around 711, 712 after Christ. That is 80 years after Muhammad died. But somehow Muhammad mentioned in the Quran that Joseph was sold for few pieces of dirham or little price
Right.
of dirham. So how can you introduce dirham in Joseph days? That's literally 1700 years before Christ. Even if you bought it in Jesus' days, it does not work. Even if you bought it in Muhammad days, it does not work. So obviously, the Quran of Muhammad, as my friend Brother Murad said, was accurately have nothing to do with Muhammad. Somehow, a few hundred years later, we come up with that Quran, and we got plenty of different Quran, thousands of words different. Just a quick example here. Lamasa, lamastum, lamastum. Lamastum, the Quran, which is used in Moroccan, is actually had sex with. Lamastum is touched. So what word should I translate? In my translation, I put if you have touched a woman, because that's the word lamastum. Lamastum is had sex. Even those are too close to each other. If you're not careful when you read the Quran, you'll not catch mistake. But there are many Qurans. But what makes me put my Arabic translation of the Quran is very simple to the English class, because they lie bluntly on specific words, which, by the way, I heard Brother Murad talk to Adam Seeker on that topic, and he hit so many of these words. It is beyond imagination. It's not, as I said earlier, a mistake. I mean, when you translate, you're not infallible. You make mistakes. You maybe put the wrong word or the wrong meaning, misunderstand it. But no, these people knows exactly what they're doing, and they're on purpose deceiving the English speakers to make them believe in Islam, not the one which we have according to the word of Allah in the Arabic language.
I have a question then. Because something like 85% or more of Muslims don't speak Arabic, and many thus default to English, this means that these translations, these official translations, are also deceiving Muslims.
Yeah, it is. It is, because sadly, it's 13% are Arab. And you know what's amazing? Even when you look at the Arab-speaking Muslims, half of them never read the Quran. And the first time I met was a bunch of doctors from Saudi Arabia, a conference from Saudi Arabia. And I saw these are doctors from Saudi Arabia. There must be scholars of Islam. I was shocked to my bones. All of them are drinking in Cairo, one of the hotel in Cairo. They're all drinking, having party, and not one of them know a verse in the Quran. These are the 45, 50 years old professional doctors who do not know jack about Allah or Muhammad. So I don't know how many of the real Muslims in the world speak Arabic and understand the Arabic language. But in the country of Indonesia, 220 million people there. I've been there twice doing some mission work, ministering to the Muslim people of Indonesia. Imagine 220 million Muslims in Indonesia do not know their right hand from their left hand. That is the largest Muslim country in the world.
Yeah, and it's also becoming more radicalized.
Oh, easy. If you put me as an imam in any of these foreign Muslim country, and I can make out of them whatever I want.
Wow. Yeah. Any comment, Paul, before we...
I find that this happens with Sharia also. We were just going through this section on trade yesterday, on yesterday's show, and they're hiding their love of slavery. It's not being translated into English. They're hiding all of it. And that, I mean, there's many things, but that's just something we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, we know it's been removed from the Reliance of the Traveler, but you can find the chapters on slavery. I had to compile material for Adam Seeker, and he's covered it in his channel, and I've done so as well in the Hidayah. So if you go to the Hidayah, you'll find dozens and dozens of pages on the laws of slavery, the Sharia laws. And you can cover that there. And it's, I mean, I posted a few things which upset some Muslims recently on the few people realize that the European slave trade to Muslim Africa is at minimum 4 times bigger, if not 10 to 15 times bigger than the African slave trade to North America. So you're looking at between 1600 and 1800, you're looking at something like 5 million Europeans were trafficked from Europe to Africa by Muslim slave traders, whereas only something like 350,000 to 500,000 Africans went west to North America. 15 million went south to South America, and then something like 60 to 80 million blacks, 80% of whom did not survive, went to Saudi Arabia. Where are the blacks in Saudi Arabia? Where are the blacks in Saudi Arabia? The blacks in America have increased 100-fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, add to that also, brother, about the number of slaves who survived and made it to Saudi Arabia, but they were promised to receive their freedom if they win the battle. So they went to fight for the Muslims and end being killed in these wars, and they never received their freedom. So it's a very sad story.
Yeah, very, very sad. Yeah, Saint Murad, any thoughts you want to add, given what we've heard from Usama, because you seem to have common findings, of course, on these falsified words, and any themes that you want to maybe raise that you think are relevant.
Yeah, I just want to tell the people the main difference between my work and the work of Osama is that I see the Quran as a document that has nothing to do with Muhammad. It has been fabricated later, and reading Muhammad into the Quran is actually a much later invention. Even the 4 mentions of Muhammad in the Quran might not be mentioning this Arabian prophet. So when I look at the Quran with this lens, then suddenly I get a lot of different results. Like, let's say, for example, abrogation. When I created the concordance and I looked at this word at every instance, I found that it does not mean abrogate. Because if you look at nasakha, it means make a copy or transcribe, something along those lines, or inscribe also. So how are we confident that this means abrogation of verses in the Quran? This comes from the hadith, and also the idea that the Bible is corrupted. It comes from the hadith and from later exegesis of the Quran. It's also a medieval hoax, if you like. This idea that the Bible is corrupt. The Quran never says that the Bible is corrupt. You see? So also when I look at the Quran mention Injil, it's very strange that it doesn't say, for example, Anajil, which would be multiple gospels, but maybe it says the Injil with the Nasara, because Nasara, they are not Christians. They are a heretical group, which are the Nazarenes. So they had this one Injil, which would be a corrupt version of the Gospel of Matthew. So this is how I look at things. I look at it from the lens of just the people that lived at that time, who looked at Islam, Byzantine sources, Jewish sources, Sassanid, Persian sources. So I come up with a lot of different results. That's the main difference. And back to you, Lloyd.
No, thank you. Osama, your thoughts on that, because this.
Well, it's I think until I read Brother Murad and translation, really, I will not be able to come up with a fair judgment. But as an example, use the word Injil. Well, the word Injil is not an Arabic word. I had a problem, and after almost 2 years,
it's an Ethiopic word, in fact, and it's an Ethiopic word.
Yeah. So, but what happened when I was working my translation, I had my Arabic book, and I have, every time I see a word I do not understand, I remember very well, put it in pink color. So I ended with literally a good 600 words into pink color. Now you go back to the dictionary, look at what Muslim scholars will try to tell you what actually Allah meant by that word. Amazingly, I found that sometimes they give you 7, 8 different opinions. If you go to any of the scholars, Al-Tabari or Ibn Kathir or Al-Qurtubi or Jalani, so now we get a bigger problem. He meant A, B, C, D, E, F, G for the same word. Which one is the right word? So sometimes in the beginning, I said, I make my head a little bit bigger. I'm not going to make a big deal, because my heart desire is to show the falsehood of the Quran, the errors of the Quran, the contradiction of the Quran. And so I kind of went with what majority Muslim scholars said what the word is. But when it comes to some specific words where I could not find in the Arabic dictionary, and I almost struggled to the point that I almost quit. I'm not going to translate this book. I wasted 2 years of my life because there's so many words I do not know what it actually means in the Arabic language. Until I met with Father Boutros Zachariah, we were doing some TV shows with him in California, and he told me, Usama, have you ever thought that these are not Arabic words? I said, excuse me, what? I'm talking about the word of Allah in the Quran, the pure Arabic, the easy to understand, as Allah declared all over the Quran. He said, no. He said, these are not Arabic words, period. So now I get a little bit more hope. I went back online and do some searching, and surprise, there are great scholars who did a great job to point to all the foreign words in the Quran. And believe it or not, as I download this document and I look at my pink words, it was almost in the right order. The pink word of the Quran, it is not Arabic word. It's Hebrew. It is Syriac. It is Coptic. It is Ethiopian. Whatever language Muhammad or not Muhammad, those who helped Muhammad to write the Quran after, I believe, a good maybe 100 years after Muhammad died, or maybe longer than that. That's where we see all these foreign words. That helped me a lot to figure out, the word gospel is not Arabic word. It's actually good news. And what is the good news? And when Muhammad did not give us any good news, except Muhammad said that Isa said the good news that there will be a prophet come after him. His name is Ahmed. The word Ahmed is I praise you. It's a Hebrew word. The word Muhammad is the praised one, or the one who is worthy. Mahmud, the one who is worthy to be praised. These are not actually names. These are.
And the archaeology proves, I mean, as far back as 518, which is long before Muhammad was born, that the word Muhammad referred to the God of the Jews.
Yeah, the praised one. It is the praised one.
Correct.
Yeah. So obviously,
I'm actually going to be. Yeah. Sorry. Go on, please.
Well, so anyway, we know for sure that it was not about a man by the name Muhammad. That Muhammad or Ahmaduka, as well as the scripture, though, in the book of Psalms, it's talking about. And the real name of Muhammad we know is Qasim, not Muhammad. No, his mama never called him Muhammad. Come here, Muhammad. Goes there, Muhammad. Qasim is Muhammad's real name, and Muslim cannot deny that.
How do we know? I know because Muhammad is a title. So how do we know his name is Qasim?
Well, because we have in many hadiths where he was mentioned to be that is his name. So you cannot. It's not in the Quran. So it's from the hadith and from outside sources of Muslim. They believe, actually, a good friend of mine who did an article, great article on that topic, and proved without any doubt, Qasim is Muhammad's real name, not Muhammad.
I'll have a question about that in a moment. Paul, anything you want to ask or add?
I think it's funny that the only prophet not named by name in the entire Quran is Dakdok.
Now, why would that be? Yeah. Someone asked me about the Quranist movement, the Quran-only movement. Now, according to the Sharia, a Muslim that denies the Hadith, the Sunnah, effectively is an apostate, right? That's in the Sharia. However, I find that there are a couple of legitimate Quranists. However, I don't find that their position is believable, nor are they honest. Because, for instance, if you ask a Muslim, what are the names of Muhammad's wives? They'll say, oh, it was Betty, Sally, Jeannie, Harriet, Helen, and Joan, right? And you say, show me on which page in the Quran I can find that list of names, please. And it's not in the Quran. So how can you know anything about Muhammad's life from the Quran if it's not in the Quran? So therefore, they don't dispute the names of Muhammad's wives as just one simple example, yet they say they're Quranists, Quran only, yet they don't dispute the names of Muhammad's wives, which are not in the Quran and come from the Sunnah. So I don't find that these people are honest or believable. I believe that they are using this as a claim to defend themselves against the embarrassment of the Sunnah.
Yeah, Brother Murad, you have to understand, Lloyd, I'm sorry. The problem with those Quranic only people, they do not know the Quran itself. The reason they reject the Hadith because there's so many of the saying of Muhammad and the action of Muhammad, the Sunnah of Muhammad. It is unbelievable, immoral. But the Quran teaches the same thing. I mean, if I give you a good example, they would say, well, We don't believe in the hadith because Aisha said Muhammad married me when I was 6 and had sex with me when I was 9, and he died when I was 18, which Muhammad had to be 54 when he was involved.
No,
with
but 9 was a woman back then, and 9 was equal to 18. The numbers have gotten
25.
smaller. They've halved in value.
Around 25 and few days. Understand?
Yeah, yeah. So the numbers have halved in value since then. So things have changed. In the last
hold
few
on,
hundred
hold on.
years.
We got a problem there. We got to remember this is a lunar calendar we're talking about.
Yeah. But in reality, you go to Quran chapter 65 and you read about the divorce, something I studied in college in Egypt, and it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that that's what Allah teach. There is no such a thing as age. This is I consider myself to be an expert on marriage and divorce in Islam because that's what they taught me. So you can marry a child after birth when you know she's a female. There's no age of
yes. The Sharia that has no age.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, but to be involved with sexually, she have to be baligha, means she have to be come to the age of puberty, which is not true. Why?
No.
Because Quran chapter 65 verse 4 said, you divorce an older wife and you doubt in your mind that she maybe is pregnant, there is a prescribed waiting time of 3 months. Within 3 months, she cannot be married to somebody else in case she's pregnant by you. As well as for those who have not yet begun menstruation. These are little girls, according to most scholar interpretation, like as for example, Tabari. So what is the age? About 8 or 9? We just take 8 or 9 to follow the sunnah of Muhammad. That's what Muhammad did. So the Quran and the Hadith are both immoral when it comes to the topic of marriage to little children. So, but most likely they will reject the Hadith because they only want to go with the Quran. When in reality, you cannot even practice the Quran unless you believe in the Hadith. As Allah states throughout the Quran, obey Allah and obey the messenger. You cannot obey Muhammad when you know nothing about what Muhammad said, because nothing is written in the Quran was the teaching of Muhammad. But what we know about the saying of Muhammad is what we must obey as Muslims. Therefore, you have no option but to believe Allah, His word in the Quran, and the Hadith, which is Muhammad's word. Otherwise, you'll be living in disobedience to all the command of Allah to obey Muhammad.
Thank you. Yeah, Saint Murad, any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about the word Arabic, Arabi. This word itself, Christoph Luxemburg says, it itself is Aramaic, and it means something like clear. So the word mubin would be evidenced, like backed with evidence, and Arabiyun would be clear. So this itself will throw the whole Quran is Arabic legend out of the window. And it makes sense, because why would you call the Quran Arabic if it's clearly Arabic? But let me tell you why this whole thing began. Muslims, they used to call Al-Ajam or Ajami for the Persians only. This is something that people don't know. Persians are Bilad al-Ajam. Arab are the Arabians, people from Arabia. And
say that word again, please.
Which Ajam.
Oh, okay.
Ajam are Persians exclusively, not just any foreigner or non-Arab. And you can find this in maps in the medieval times. So this is imposed from the standard Islamic narrative that the Quran is Arabic and it's not Ajami, not Persian. Maybe they are fighting Salman the Persian actually having a hand in writing the Quran, some of the Quran, as the Byzantine King Leo III used to accuse Muslims. So as you can see, there are multiple layers. What Usama is saying is correct, but it's a layer. Like if you think of it as an onion, he could be the outer layer.
Wow.
The words, the stuff that he's using is from the medieval times. I'm trying to go deeper into the onion at a more primitive stage with the Quran. Yes, Lloyd.
Wow. Yeah, your thoughts, Osama. I see you nodding your head. Any thoughts from your side?
Well, it's not an easy subject. I mean, literally, you talk about going back to a good over 1,400 years to translate what Muslims claim to put there and bring it to us here. It's unbelievable. But the beauty of it, the more you know about the sources where Muhammad copied his material from, the Old Testament, New Testament, and many of the what we believe to be not true gospel, maybe this will help us. And also, if you put in your head, that, wait a minute, there are these foreign words. Perhaps the guy who was writing that specific passage or that portion of the Quran, he's some guy from some Syriac background, and that's why he will pick up these specific words there, and you see it repeating from one place to another place. The contradiction between what Muhammad put in the Quran and the true source of his story, it blow your mind. And the more you dig in deep it and you see the repeated portion of the Quran about the same story, we talk about Moses all over the Quran, Abraham is all over the Quran. The more Muhammad repeats himself, the more you can see it. This is not an Arabic Quran. This is a copy from other source, and here is where we have the misunderstanding. Even sometimes you see confusion between two different stories, and Muhammad puts them together. As a matter of fact, there are some passages in the Quran with 3 different accounts from 3 different periods of life and different background and different, and he puts them all together in one story. And you cannot help it but to laugh. Sadly, most Muslims, they study the Quran, they work so hard to memorize it with the shake of the head. And Murad knows that as an ex-Muslim, front and back or right and left, and they have no idea what they're saying. I have met Muslims in foreign countries who memorize the Quran much better than most Arab, and they have no idea what they're saying in their recitation. It's demonic work. It's unbelievable.
Right. Couple of points. I just find it crazy that there's not a single Orthodox Christian story that is accurately written in the Quran. It's all mythical, children's tales, Jewish Mishnah, or Gnostic, but not a single actual Orthodox Christian story.
And that's what caused me to write my 2 books, exposing the truth about the Quran, the revelation of errors. A good 750 pages. As a matter of fact, my editors...
The revelation of errors. Let me bring that up.
Actually, my editor took another 150 pages out of my translation. I don't like it. But they said, Usama, you repeat yourself. I said, but Allah repeat himself. Why can't I repeat myself? No, let's make it short and sweet. So these 2 books were a shocking thing to those who have read it, because we know where the story come from. But Muhammad destroyed every copy. Literally every story he copied in his Quran.
Okay. Amazing. Saint Murad, you were going to say something?
Yeah, about the Bible, I think the authors of the Quran, I call them authors because I think it's not Muhammad, they are authors. They had no access to a Bible, but they had access to a corrupt version of Matthew, which is the Gospel of the Nazarenes, and there were heretical Jews called the Judaizers that helped this movement of Mu'mineen start, probably around Iraq and Syria region. So that's why the Quran is talking to a fringe
heretical
groups.
Jewish messianic group.
Yes, but it's outside of the Bible and the canon, you see?
Yeah, in fact, I've been meaning, I read these notes maybe 3 years ago. I had access to, I found a couple of theses, university dissertations written in the 30s and 50s and 60s, and I read them, and I've been meaning to do a talk on them on my channel for about 3 years now, which discusses the early history of Christianity in Arabia, which many scholars deny. But we can see that Christianity was well established, and there was a massive fight, which is crazy what you mentioned about the Gospel of Matthew, because the Christians had theirs, and then there were like 5 or 6 Gnostic groups with their fake versions, and there were massive theological battles over who has the correct one. And much of this is centered around Najran, which is in southern Arabia, very close to Yemen, and this area was called Arabia Heresium Ferax, or Arabia, the bearer of heresies. Because when they were kicked out of Rome, they went to Haran, they went to Najran, and they went to Alexandria in Egypt. So these were epicenters of heresy. So thank you. That's a really interesting point, Murad.
Mm-hmm. These people, these people, they thought that the Gospel of Matthew was the only correct gospel, but without the genealogy. It was called the Gospel of the Nazarenes, and they had this Hebrew version of it. So I believe that these are the groups that were close to the first believers, or Saracens as they are called in the sources, Ishmaelites, no Muslims, and they wanted to conquer the Holy Land. That's what I believe the Quran is talking about. It's as Odon Lafontaine says, I like his thesis. This Judeo-Nazarene teachers who were teaching these warriors how to act when they try and reconquer the Holy Land. That's what history, actual history, tells us outside of the Islamic narrative. There is no Badr, there is no Uhud, there is no. This stuff you will not find. Even the Jewish massacres that Muhammad supposedly did with the Jews, you will never find any Jewish source citing such stuff. So that's why I say that the standard Islamic narrative is, at the very least, flimsy. It's not history.
Wow, yeah. That is, Murad, honestly, and also Sama, I mean, this information is so difficult for us to process because we've believed these
Yeah.
lies for so long.
Well, I kind of like the old story because they show you how savage Islam is. Like maybe it's a massacre of Bani Qurayza, but now I know for sure this is not true. So it's like I'm not very happy about it. But
But they obviously did it as an example, as a showcase of Muhammad's power and how he.
But you know, Osama, sorry to cut you off,
Go on,
Lloyd.
please. Go on.
Osama, I have tried to look at these massacres from Jewish sources, and I went to the Jewish encyclopedia, and then I found it. I looked at the citation right under, and it was from Al-Tabari.
I know.
So,
Well, and you
so
know
they
what?
themselves, they do not know.
Yeah. It is sad because that is the influence of Islam on the rewriting of the history of what took place in the past. I mean, how many times I hear here in America preachers, famous ones, who will tell me that if Abraham did not have any involvement with Hagar, we will not have the Ishmaelites and the Mohammedans. Imagine that here, great professors and great teachers and they have doctorate degree, these things that the Arab are the descendants of Ishmael. When in reality, a simple reading to Genesis account, chapter 25, I mean, in one chapter, God puts them, here is the Arab, the first 6 verses, here's the Ishmaelite below them, 2 different nations. Arab are the descendant of Keturah, the wife of Abraham, whom he married after the death of Sarah, and they lived in the country of the east. That's where Job lived, and we can tie her descendants to the Arab country. In the same chapter, verse 18, down he sees that here is Ishmael, who was, by the way, were married to an Egyptian wife according to the Genesis account, and who have from her 12 sons, and we know their names, and we know where they lived. They lived between Assyria and Havilah, front of Egypt, and Assyria, northern part, the part which God promised Abraham that his children will have, part of the Abrahamic promise God had with Abraham in Genesis 15. So, but just because Muslims said that they are the descendant of Ishmael, now that influence the preachers of the West, and they repeat the same lies, and now they're convincing the West that, hey, Ishmaelites have something to do with Muhammad. When in reality, they're 2 different separate people group, 2 different nations, 2 different locations for living.
Right.
So that's the reality. And you know what's more than that, worse than that? We do not even know who Muhammad's father is. Abdullah died 3 years before Muhammad was born. So if you do not know who is your father, how in the world you can tie yourself to some other people group?
Yeah, I have 2 points that, yeah.
Sorry, go on, Murad, please. Go on.
Okay,
please.
only these 2 points, then I will listen. I just want to tell Osama also that the Quran never mentions who was going to be sacrificed. You know why? Because it is 100% Isaac. Because the Quran knows that the listener has the correct assumption from the Bible. That's number 1. Number 2, about the word Saracens. In the sources, people, they say it means that because the Muslims were the destitute of Sarah. But actually, there is another reading for the word Saracens, which could be even turned into Arabic Sarraqin, meaning those who keep stealing, who keep plundering.
Wow.
So this is another way of looking at it. So Saracens could be the thieves, the plunderers who keep on plundering. It has this magnification
Pirates.
in the word.
Yes, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Wow, Murad, every time you speak, honestly, you just completely rewire my world. It's very difficult to keep up. Before I mention my comments, Paul, anything from yourself? Because I mean, this is mind-blowing information from our 2 guests.
I've had fun with Usama, working with Usama on he's been doing a regular show where they're going through the Quran. And what Murad talked about, he actually just spent some time ago talking about going right straight through the Quran, saying, look, this person who's getting sacrificed can't be Ishmael because the Quran refers to Isaac here, here, here. It has to be Isaac. And the thing, I'll say this: he's been going through the book of Yusuf, or you would sorry, the chapter of Yusuf in the Quran, Joseph, and I find this hilarious because I call the Quran conman language. I say it's written by someone who knew Arabic as a second language. I'm an educator. Uh, I work in the inner city. I recognize certain quirks in the Quran that indicate there's no way this was not written by someone who didn't know the language as a second language learner. There's no way. Well, what I'm finding
Hmm.
also is, and I say this over and over again, the Quran is written, and I say it's written in conman language because it's written in generalities. Anybody who studies intelligence analysis, anybody who works in law enforcement, cannot read the Quran and not recognize it's written in conman language.
Understood, yeah. I just want to mention this has been making rounds on X, so thank you for reminding me in the comments, whoever that was now. Outrage in Iraq. Outrage as Iraq considers allowing girls aged 9 to be married. Now, you can go to Islam QA
Just
and find that there is no lower age limit. Any age, as Osama correctly said, is allowed. So a girl could be born a week ago and she can get married now. So yes, and also this is becoming more blatant because the West has taken a very weak position. It's culturally lacks confidence, and we need to assert ourselves. And of course, Muslims feel that they can now openly become the religion of pedophilia. Sadly, so yeah, so this is happening, and this is something to be aware of. Osama's book, The Revelation of Error, fantastic title. So yeah, do you have a electronic copy of this for people that they can
Yes,
download?
it's available. Volume 1 and 2,
Okay.
both of volumes. Yes,
Excellent. So that where can people find that?
on Amazon or our website as well.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll try and get those links up. If someone could find the links on Amazon and on Osama's website to the books, please post them in the chat. And I know people have been posting the link to Murad's free copy, the partial copy of his new Quran. And then also, I wanted to bring up this for you two to. I have a question. This is preempting. So, but Saint Murad does not have his PowerPoint presentation with the samples of his translation with him today. Osama, perhaps, and Saint Murad, could we maybe in a few weeks, because I'll be traveling again soon, so maybe in like 3 weeks to a month, could we have you guys on with some of Saint Murad's samples of the mistranslations of the Quran and have you guys discuss that? Because I think this would be a
Oh,
mind-blowing
that'd be awesome.
education.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to work with Brother Murad on that subject. Yes, sir.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. I'm very honored. Yeah, this is Arthur Jeffrey. Now, this is from 1937, 1938. He published it. I know this is not fully, this is a little bit out of date. Even I've discovered additional words that one could add to this list. But I want to just go to the bottom of the list and I'll work my way up. So, he at the time, back in the late 30s, he discovered there were at least 2,059 foreign words in the Quran, and he had 55 different languages, from Turkish to Slavonic to Sinhalese. I mean, that's from India. Even potentially a Norse word, Georgian, right? I haven't heard of most of these languages. Tamil, Parthian, that's Iran. That's Iran, and that was an area where there was lots of heresy as well. Amharic, right? You've got, and then of course you've got up here Ethiopic. Now, if you add these together, you've got roughly 200 Ethiopic words, and then you've got about 10 Coptic words. So you've got a significantly higher proportion of Ethiopic, East African, Northeast African words than you have Coptic, which tells you there's something of a Southern African, sorry, no, Southern Arabian, East African, because those two areas were linked culturally, militarily, as well as financially back then. So there's certainly a strong Ethiopic element. And you've got Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac. And you can see nearly 400 Syriac words, 300 Aramaic, 257 Hebrew. So your thoughts on that? Saint Murad, maybe you can go first on that.
Yeah, you see, there is no language that suddenly appears, and Arabic is not different. But since Muslims, they have this myth, Arabic being the language of Allah and stuff, you can destroy this myth by saying that the word Arabi It itself it just means clear, and this word itself is Syriac. So this is funny for people who say Quran is Arabic. That's number one. So that will remove the problem. There is no problem now. You have Syriac, you have Aramaic. I think this will open the question is that where did the Quran actually come from? I think it comes from the area of Syria, and this is where the Umayyads ruled. The Quran basically comes from the Umayyads. Abdul Malik is the one who created the final version, and then the Abbasids came in with the Sunnah. This is what you find in actual history, actually. You do not find Uthman, but you find Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. You find his influence. You find his coins. You find his actual back and forth with the Byzantine emperor. This is actual history, but Uthman is a myth created by the Umayyads because Uthman was from this lineage. So they throw it back to him. That's what I think.
Look, we don't have Muhammad's original Quran. We don't have Uthman's Quran. And the language of the Quran is not Qurayshi, even though it was supposedly written in the Qurayshi dialect. So, all of this is myth. And you've got all of these foreign words. Yeah, Usama, you were nodding your head there.
It's just funny because I have read, I'm 55 years, I have read few hundreds of books of my life, and I never read in the beginning of any book, it says, this is English book. It's clear English. This is Hebrew book. It is clear Hebrew. This is French book. Even the famous writers like Shakespeare, he never put, this is my poetry. It's in the English language. It's clear language, except the Quran. Why Allah puts in the Quran is pure Arabic. You don't have Muhammad just ignore these ideas that this is pure Arabic and it's an Arabic book. We will not have this discussion right now. But it's another error in the Quran that Allah declared it is clear book in the Arabic language when we know for sure it's not Arabic. There's no chance that book can be written by Arab. And for years I say Mecca Quran, Medina Quran, Mecca Quran, Medina Quran. I'm sorry. Nothing is written in Mecca and nothing is written in Medina. Nothing is written in Muhammad days when he was alive. It has to be, I'm guessing, at least 100 years after Muhammad when somebody pinned that these poetry for us in these foreign words.
Right, there's a lot of foreign words. Your thoughts, Saint Murad?
Yeah, I agree. Let me tell you about the Mecca and Medina phases. This is very funny. But the reason, I guess, they created this is to make Muhammad another Moses that was being persecuted, he and his people, and then he went out of Egypt. So you will have this theme all over the Sunnah trying to make Muhammad another Moses and another Joshua. This is the myth. This is the Muhammadan myth. And don't forget that the very first biography of Muhammad, actually the Caliph is the one who ordered Ibn Hisham to write it for his son. So this is not something that is a historical work. This is something that's mostly fiction. If you're going to write for the Caliph's son, you better make him laugh. You better make him cry. It's something like this. So it's a myth.
I just have a point, and thanks, Mal, because Mal, I did mention that this talk that I've done 2 parts, and I'm doing a third, which is the unreliability of the Sirah and the Hadiths. And Mal shared with me a year ago, and I've just been adding my own spin to this. But look, you've got Mecca somewhere down here on the left-hand side, right, roughly close to the S here of Saudi Arabia. Then you've got these Sahih Bukhari, Uzbekistan, Iran for Sahih Muslim, Iran for Ibn Majah, Iran, Abu Dawud, Uzbekistan, Tirmidhi, Turkmenistan, Sunan al-Nasai. This is all out here. Why wasn't this stuff written in Mecca if Mecca is the epicenter of the world's oldest city, the world's blah, blah, blah. It just boggles the mind. Why is this all happening out here?
Lloyd,
that's another lie.
Lloyd, do you know this? Yeah, you know this slide? This is mine. The one you have.
That's. Okay, so
I created this in like 2020 or something.
So Mal stole it from you. I stole it from Mal, and then I know that Jay Smith stole it somewhere along the line too. So
I keep finding it everywhere. I'm happy that people.
Finally, we have an author. So hold on, hang on. Credit, Saint Murad.
Wait a minute. How about you start that talk? I've been talking about that for enough years.
Hold on, hang on. And Usama.
Okay, thank you. Now
I'm good with that. Usama, your thoughts on this? Since it's
it's just you know, if you've been, here's the truth. Joseph Goebbels said that statement years ago. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people eventually come to believe it. Muslims believe all the lies, which I used to believe when I grew up in Egypt. I mean, you can't help it. I mean, you study, you pass the test, you put the answer in the answer sheets, and we know how the Holy Mecca and the Holy Medina and the immigration. And then you see, wait a minute, how many Muslims actually believed in Muhammad in the first 13 years? 47, 48. And the people of Christ could not kill them. Oh no, they could not kill them.
Don't forget, it was only in the 14th century that there was a consensus, or the 15th century, that Muslims had a consensus that the Quran was mutawatir, that the Quran was actually the word of Allah. That was a very late consensus.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, when you study even the material talk about Mecca and the material talk about Medina, it does not make any sense how hard it is for the people, the angels of Christ, to kill Muhammad and the 47 of his believers who believed in him after on all these 13 years and end the story. No. They make up stories, and they make up, like Murad said, yes, there must be an exodus for Muhammad because Muhammad is like Moses and actually greater than Moses. And so you come up with all this propaganda lies, and we've been taught all our life, you believe it, and we share it to your children and your grandchildren, everybody believe it. So we're in reality, there was no life, not in Mecca. We don't have any archaeological evidence that Mecca and that Medina exist in Muhammad days, unless we're off with a good 150 years or so. Maybe they can bring some people there. But can you imagine Ishmael was dropped there at Mecca with his mama alone? There was nobody there. And then a little bit later, found that Ishmael is the first man who spoke the Arabic language. Even though...
No, Osama, they were dropped in the world's oldest city, in the middle of the world's oldest city, right next to the Kaaba and the Zamzam well, which is the oldest, and the Kaaba is the world's oldest temple. It's the first one made by Adam, who was 30 meters tall. Adam made a building too small for him to fit inside, and when they got there, the Zamzam was just missing, and the Kaaba was just missing accidentally, and had to run to the hills to look for the city.
I was going to tell the whole story. Now you
exactly. My apologies. I will.
But what I'm saying is, if you think about this, and then we'll learn that Ishmael is the first man who spoke the Arabic language, which is amazing. But somehow he married two different Arab wives, and their family are the one who taught him how to speak the Arabic language. So how in the world he's the first man to speak the Arabic language when he learned from somebody else? So anyway, the story does not add. If Muslim would just use logic and common sense and read their own historian writings and investigate, just take, my advice to the Muslim is this: take the Islamic glasses, the black one, off your eyes and read the text, whatever you're reading about Islam, without that, oh, it must be perfect, it must be true, it must be holy. Just remove this glass out and read what is written in your Quran, in the whatever material you read, and you find that it's fishy, it smells bad, it's not true.
Yeah. Hey, Usama, how many questions do you have about? Are we talking about creating for Sir Yusuf?
I'm sorry, I can't hear, Paul. Say again.
For chapter 12, how many questions are we talking about?
We actually am talking about over 140. But and by the way, I'm glad you mentioned that, Paul. Here we go. It's a challenge for any Muslim who would like to debate a young Jewish or Christian girl around 9 or 10 years old. I'm not gonna bring any Murad. You're not welcome, Murad. Nobody will do that. We pick up a nice 9, 10 years young girl who is a Jew or a Christian to debate the best Muslim scholars. We're gonna give the Muslims, say, 100 questions, just simple 100 questions, and he have an open quiz, which means he can open the Quran and search in the whole entire Quran back and forth about Joseph. And all what the Muslim scholar will do is just answer one right. 100 questions, you answer one right, and you win the debate. On the opposite now, the Jewish or Christian young girl, 19 years old, if they answer one wrong of the same 100 questions, the Muslim still wins the debate. I mean, that's how pathetic it is. And it is an open book quiz. I mean, anybody can answer the question. And I will not allow the Muslims to use Ibn Kathir who is actually copying the Bible in his interpretation. So just use your Quran, this clear, beautiful Quran, to answer one of 100 questions about Joseph accurately using the Quran only.
Yeah. Tell me, I mean, when you tell Muslims, look, you claim that Mecca is the oldest city, that civilization spread from Mecca to the rest of the world, that it's the oldest temple, the Kaaba, that it's the oldest city, it was a major city for a long time, and you go, so how come when Hagar got there with Ishmael, there was literally nothing there but sand? No city, no people, no Kaaba, no Zamzam. Then an angel's wing scratched and the Zamzam came. Ishmael's heel hit the ground and the Zamzam came. A bird pecked in the ground and the Zamzam came. And she ran between these two hills to look, and there was nothing. And when you tell them so, and then you, at the same time as you're claiming that there was a barren wasteland, as the Quran itself says, and they claim there was the oldest city, this is utterly contradictory. I mean, there is no reconciling. What excuse do they give?
And there's no answer. Maybe Murad know an answer.
Murad, your
Lloyd,
thoughts?
Lloyd, Mecca is not in the Quran.
We got Becca.
We got Becca and we got Mecca. Becca would be the valley of Becca, which is close to Jerusalem.
The valley of weeping.
Right.
Bible talk about it, yeah.
Yeah. Mecca, when it says ببطن Mecca, it means by the belly. Actually, Mecca, if you look at it from a Syriac perspective by Christoph Luxemburg, he says it's actually Ma'ka, meaning a battle. So in the midst of a battle, this could not be a place. And let me tell you, in my translation, I do not have even the word Yathrib, because within the Quran, you have the word Tathrib. Tathrib and Yathrib, they have the same root. It means rebuke. So when it says Ya Ahli Yathrib, it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, people of Yathrib. It means, oh, you people who keep on rebuking one another. You see? So this is what you get when you look at it from a linguistic perspective and cast aside the Islamic narrative.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the world's biggest hoax.
And if you think, and if you guys think that my translation is hard to understand, well, good luck to figure out Murad translation. I took it easy. I'm serious. I took it easy. I just so many of the things I'm looking. I cannot wait to get your Quran, Murad. But so many of the word, I just said, you know what? Just let it go. Just let it go. Don't make a big deal. Let's get the major important stuff out and let it go. I think Murad is picking too deep. God helps the Muslims.
This comment, Lloyd, you see, Mel is saying Yathrib was renamed Medina until 12th century. What does this tell you? It tells you that the Quran,
Medina
which was in the Quran, which was in the Sana'a manuscript, when you look at the manuscript, when it has the word Yathrib, it doesn't necessarily mean that place. You see, that's the idea. And this, as I tell you always, the standard Islamic narrative is a medieval forgery. And don't ever forget the Crusades. What the Crusades did in the Islamic world was shocking to the Muslims. They were shocked to the fact that Jerusalem was retaken by the Crusaders. This itself generated a whole new level to the Islamic narrative. And also, do not forget the Mongols. The Mongols almost single-handedly eradicated Islam. Then what? Then you have to come up with all kinds of fiqh, all kinds of hatred towards non-Muslim, all kinds of new Sharia. And of course, you know the Sharia much better than I do. It kept getting bigger, and the legislations kept getting harder with time to combat these forces.
And the Sharia was really, it only started forming around what, 850? And it didn't take any kind of definitive shape until about 950. But in truth, it was only completed in what, the 1500s, maybe the 1600s? It was only really, so it took about 900 years to develop the Sharia. And I'm assuming, like the Quran, like the Hadiths, it developed over hundreds of years. Paul, any thoughts from yourself before I go on?
I find that the entire Sharia is developed as an afterthought. I'm not sure after what, because sometimes I wonder if the Quran pieces were created first, and sometimes I wonder if the Hadiths were created first, or if the Sharia was created and they tried to dance around things. But you find problems with that where Muhammad says things like water is pure, all water is pure, and then the Hadiths say, and that's from the Hadiths, and then you find the Quran correcting Muhammad, and that stuff just makes you laugh. I'm sorry.
Can I add one thing, Lloyd, about the Sharia? You have to
Yeah.
put it in context. There is something with the Islamic narrative that we forget the context, which is geographical and also historical. You say it started at 850. Uh, the first question you should always have in mind is who was the caliph? Because the caliph he was God. He used to decide everything. And during 950, with the Abbasids, you have to think of the riots going on and all these people who wanted to take the caliph down. And actually, one of them was called Al-Muqanna, the masked one. And this was like a socialist revolution. You have to look into these revolutions because these legislations in the Sharia, uh, some of them are a counter to these revolutions. So this is very critical because it's what the caliph wants is what the caliph gets. It's not the Quran. Forget the Quran. It doesn't play a big role in Sharia actually.
Okay, that's really yeah. So the because look, I've been doing now the hadiths, right? And I mean these, according to Western scholars and even according to Muslim scholars, these isnads are just fabricated, right? There's so much controversy, so much doubt, so many issues that have been discovered, even by Muslim scholars who are casting doubt on the hadith, saying that, and we also know, and they're saying, for instance, that hadiths were created and isnads were created to support given theological, social, religious, political, or whatever positions at a given time for a given group. So people would come up with contradictory hadiths to support their position and redact it back to the past and claim the Quran and claim that Muhammad did so and so and so on. I mean, so the Quran, I think, was a football that was kicked around, and we know Muslims are great at destroying past evidence and then trying to say, well, this is the only Quran, really, and there was nothing else before. And we know the Sunnah manuscript is actually not Uthmanic. It seems to be one of those deviant Qurans that they try to burn. Your thoughts, Usama?
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the saying of Muhammad. Muhammad, according to the Muslim believes that he began his prophethood when he was 40. He died at the age of 63, 23 years. If you collect the saying of Muhammad and just give it to somebody to read, it will make him a guy who lived roughly around 200 years. There's no way Muhammad said what Muslim claims that he said. It's a fact. I mean, not talk about the subject and the contradiction of the saying. I'm talking about the timing. You know, we know that Jesus lived. We know that Jesus did a great ministry for 3.5 years. And if we collect the red words out of the gospel, which is 100%, we know Jesus said these red words, it will make a good couple of hours, maybe 3 hours worth of reading. Now, you go to Muhammad days, that's, I know, a little bit later, 600 years later, but how in the world Muhammad had any time to make up all these sayings? Some of them are lengthy one, and some of them just full of nonsense, and say, oh, Muhammad said this, Muhammad said that. The chance for Muhammad to say all what he said is a slim, zero chance. But Muslims love to say good words for Muhammad because they believe they receive a blessing for saying it, and
Right.
they believe a blessing for everyone who obeys. And that's where you come up with all the saying of Muhammad.
Yeah. Even within the Islamic sources, for instance, I spent a year sitting with Umar the first son, Abdullah, right? Who died 693, said one legal scholar, and I did not hear him transmit anything from the Prophet. And then we learned from another scholar, writing around 740, observes, I never heard Jabir ibn Zayd say the Prophet said, and yet the young men around here are saying it 20 times an hour.
And by the way, some of these names in the list of names, so and so heard, so and so heard, so and so heard Muhammad. Some of these names never exist. I don't even know who these people are. Nobody knows who they are.
Right.
So it's not because you give me a narrative by so and so and so and so that means these are real people who exist. We do not know if Muhammad exists, for heaven's sake. How do you know about the rest of these names who, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of fabrication going on, and clearly a lot of, yeah.
And we got
Paul?
to remember who pays the biggest penalty. It's the person who actually believes in this stuff.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Saint Murad, any thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking about the Quranic readers, and there is something also very critical. Who is the first reader of the Quran? You will find that it is Ibn Amir. Ibn Amir is maybe by the end of the Umayyad period or the beginning of the Abbasid period. So why there were no readers before, like by the beginning of the Umayyad period? And also, this writer called Raymond Ibrahim, he had a conversation with David Wood, and people kept asking, how did the Sunnah Shia split happen if the historical Muhammad is someone else? And he uses this as a very strong point to argue that the Islamic narrative is basically right. Well, this is because he didn't read the actual sources from that time, which comes outside from the Islamic narratives. The real Ali is not a caliph. The historical real Ali is not a caliph. His name was not Ali, it was Abu Turab, meaning father of dust. And this is mentioned in the second chronicle of Zuqnin, and he is mentioned as a rebel. So this was a rebel that wanted to get a hold of what's going on. And he never mentioned that he was from the line of Muhammad and he had nothing to do with Muhammad. The Sunnah Shia split is actually rebels that wanted to take Muawiyah out of the scene. And Muawiyah was a sort of a heretical Christian. He was not a Muslim. How do we know? Of course, I think you know this, Lloyd. He had all sorts of crosses on his
Right.
coins, and he had on his inscriptions. So he was like a heretical Christian, not a Muslim like today. So Muawiyah today would be a kafir, actually.
Here we go. What a coincidence. I was
Yeah.
just plagiarizing this from you and Mal today.
Great
But
stuff.
look, I'm following in the footsteps of Allah and Muhammad. And as you know, Allah works in mysterious ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mashallah, mashallah.
So here we have, I mean, Muawiyah and the Christian cross. So we see a cross here. You can see that here. And Mavia or Muawiyah, servant of Allah, Abdallah, and Amir al-Muqminin, commander of the believers. And don't forget, it was under the Umayyads. They were just called there was a small sect within the Umayyads that called themselves the believers, and that name was adopted because eventually they wanted to create a fresh identity. I mean, I've discussed it in the past. I don't remember all the details, but Muawiyah, it's very possible he was a Christian and he was named after Queen Mavia. I mean, now you could say, for instance, that this was a Christian who was a servant or a soldier that worked for the Muslim, but there was no evidence of Islam or Muslims at the time, and it's very strange. You have coins like this with a fish on it, right? That are very Christian, and you have coins with crosses on them. And here you've got Muhammad. This is an inscription from 518. I've discussed this and others like it prior. Here you've got Muhammad in Sabaik from 518, and it refers to the Lord of the Jews, by the highly praised. So this is, and in fact, there's a different inscription which talks about Jesus. It talks about, but in the name of the Lord of the Jews and his son, the Christos. And it refers to Muhammad, and Jesus and God at different times referred to as Muhammad. So clearly these are Christians prior to Islam, and they've just taken
No. That is Muhammad before he came in the flesh.
Geez, sorry. Yeah, thanks.
Let me tell you also, there is a source about Muawiyah. He went to pray in Golgotha, and he prayed to Mother Mary. This is also in a source which really predates the Islamic sources which come from the medieval times. So this guy Muawiyah, he was a Christian, but a heretical kind of Christian, or you could say maybe a monothelite. This is a weird sect that Heraclius tried to do. This was at the time when there was these fights about the nature of Christ and stuff. So this is really the milieu that Muawiyah the first appeared in. And as you can see, it kept this beginning movement of Mu'mineen It kept distancing itself till it became the
Yeah.
Islam that we know today.
Yeah, we've got a cross here and Muhammad.
Yeah.
You got the name Muhammad and a Christian cross on a coin, which is insane. There's a bunch of crosses on this coin, and you've got Muhammad by name. So Muhammad was obviously, well, in this case, a Christian reference, and then possibly it became like a heterodox reference, a heresy. So, guys, I typically don't go very long on my streams. I try not to go too long. Usually, like an hour 15 is where I try to sort of keep my streams. But yeah, but I mean, these coins are a death blow. Can I maybe get you guys' thoughts on this? How long would you like to go? Would you like to go further, or shall we sort of reconvene at another time, and then Saint Murad can bring his materials, and Osama, you guys can. I mean, you guys are the heavyweights here, you know.
I can.
I think it's
Yeah, I could just counter this,
Sure.
if you like, Lloyd, because there
For
are
sure.
a lot of people who say, well, Muawiyah, when he got to power, he didn't have much time, or he didn't have like the resources to mint new coins, so he had to work with what's there. Well,
yeah,
of course, this is a big scam, because Muawiyah, throughout his whole reign, he had the crosses, and the one after him, only Abdul Malik is the one who started removing the crosses. And another thing is, let's look at um, any other people who conquered Rome. Immediately they changed the coins, so that they tell you, we are the new guys here, this is how it's gonna be. So keeping the crosses with the word Muhammad, and this word actually, if you read it in Aramaic, it could be Yasua. Just type in Google Yasua in Aramaic. So Yasua would be the correct name for Jesus. So this,
Right.
what you see now, Muhammad, it could actually be Yasua. This is just what I want to say.
Okay, so, but it feels like we're slowly unraveling a mystery, and I mean, because of the internet, because of the efforts we've all made, it looks like Islam. I just feel like it's unraveling, it's falling apart, and historically, the historical method is what is killing it. Any thoughts from yourself, Osama?
well, I think we have good introduction today for the work of our translations, and I really want to dig into it so we can get to another program soon, Lord's willing, maybe in a week or 2 weeks, whatever time you fit with Brother Murad and both of you guys. And I'd love to show our wonderful English audience. Here is what Allah said in the Arabic language. Here's what Muslim scholar translated, and here is what actually said in the English language. And I'd love to hear what Murad think of my translation, if he can come up with some of his verses. And I would like to, get to know a little bit more, because I have not read yet anything from Brother Murad translation. And I know
Oh, well,
he's given a sample for people to read, and maybe we can use that sample. That'll be a good idea too.
yeah, dude, I'm thrilled. This would be great. Quran versus Quran. It's like, you had the dance off in Zoolander. Now we're gonna have the Quran off.
And I do not know, Loyal, do you allow Muslim to come, and maybe the kind of gives them a chance to ask questions or give comments in the end of our
I mean,
program?
we could do that. Look, typically I don't do that,
Okay.
but I certainly could. I mean, there's no reason not to. But I mean, typically that's not what I do on my channel. There's plenty that do blood sports, on the internet. But yeah, certainly we could do that. I prefer to keep mine sort of uninterrupted,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, we could certainly consider that. If you want to let me know, we could bring someone up afterwards to ask questions. But I would generally prefer that we deliver our message first,
And then
and then
open the floor. Yeah, that'll be
before we get stuck with interruptions and propaganda.
sure. That'll
Okay,
be
yeah,
awesome.
that would be great. Yeah, Paul, any thoughts from yourself?
Well, I always find it from a teacher's point of view. I'm still stuck on the term Saracen. You said it meant the thieves who don't stop stealing. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, Sariq would be the one who steals, but Sarraqin would be those who continuously or who keep on stealing. So it has this sort of continuity and consistency to it. Sarraqin.
Pirates.
This is
Pirates.
yeah.
I'm gonna be laughing about that for a while. I have to do a little bit more research, but if that's what it means, Boy, it should change our history books.
But remember, I am saying this is one of the possibilities. I'm not saying
Yeah.
this is the only way of looking at it.
Yeah, look, I can tell you now, all of our minds, the whole audience is thinking, "Yep, thieves sounds about right." That's
Well, being the educator. I'm sorry, being the educator, and Usama's in on this too, because we came about this different directions. He's been doing something for quite a long time on the errors in the textbooks, and it's funny because I started doing that, and I didn't realize he'd already done it. And I'm just looking at the textbooks that we have now, and they are so corrupted. It's disgusting to think that what we're teaching our kids now is what created our problem in the United States, where all those it starts in elementary schools, it goes all the way through the high schools, and boy, if you look at what we teaching kids about Islam and in favor of Islam now, you'd be disgusted.
Yeah, but look, that's Qatari money that's infecting us. Qatari and Saudi money that's infecting your education system from K through to university, and you're seeing it on the streets with these Hamas protests.
Hamas lovers, yes, Hamas lovers.
Yeah. And you know what's amazing? I talked about these lies. We have a presentation in our ministry. It's called Lies in the Textbooks, where we cover 15 of these lies. And the first 3 lies was about Israel. And I did this presentation for a good, maybe 11 years, 12 years. And I never thought that the result of this brainwashing our children in our public schools will be up to that level, because you're talking about over 90% of those protesters are actually from Christian homes. Some of them are Catholic, some are Baptist, some are whatever. And of course, a bunch of them are gay and lesbians, standing with the Palestinians, less than 10% of them in 200 colleges. And here's my expectation is this semester, it will be 500-600 colleges. As a matter of fact, if Trump won his election in the following semester, it will be even in high schools, because we already brainwashed our children from 2002, 2003 until now with all these lies about these occupiers and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get to the top of this today, but maybe that's another subject for another time. But that is the result of brainwashing our children. And here we see the result. It is actually the Palestinian using our children as useful idiots for their own benefit and for the benefit of the Muslim, for the destruction of America.
Yeah, this is unfortunate, but look, I think all of us in our own way, we fight the fight. We try to get the truth out there. I believe we can win we have the facts. So, but yeah, we're fighting a big machine, but I just believe that, as I tell people, we need to be the grains of sand. That grain of sand turns into a landslide. We need to be the grain of sand in the gears, and enough grains of sand and you jam those gears. You just grind them till they stop.
Amen.
And this is what we do. Yeah, Saint Murad, thanks Usama. Saint Murad, final thoughts from yourself, and then we can wrap up. I think, but I'd love to have you guys back. I mean, this is great, and that whole Quran discussion, the interpretation, would be amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Lloyd, and thank you, Paul, for making this possible, and thank you, Usama, for having an open mind about my approach, because sometimes maybe we contradict each other. This is not a problem. And about just one word about this Palestinian stuff, let me tell the LGBTQ community that if you go to Palestine, you will never return, because you will be thrown off a very high cliff. So
no, there'll be a rooftop party given in your honor.
Yeah, so
as what was it, JD Vance? No, it was Benjamin Netanyahu said, chickens for KFC.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah. So guys, any final words, Usama? And
very simple is good. When I finished my project 15 years ago, I was always hoping and praying that somebody else beside me will come up with a better translation. And sadly, so far I have not seen. I'm looking for Murad's one. I think it's going to be a powerful one. And the funny thing is, when people looked at my translation, those who does not speak Arabic, they were quick to judge. It's an evil translation. It's propaganda. It's not true. And I said, let's look at the text in Arabic. Well, we do not know Arabic. Well, God help me. How can I prove to you that I'm actually doing the right translation when you don't know the Arabic language? But somehow Murad will make me more credible, even though maybe, I'm not sure, maybe we'll have disagreement, but it doesn't matter really. If we will throw the Bible out because we have different wording of the translation, we'll not have the 40 English translation today. And I believe all of them are accurate, unless there is agenda like the Muslim agenda of hiding and sugarcoating. So look forward to have another meeting with all of you, especially Brother Murad, as we'll discuss these differences between the propaganda translation and our translation. Hopefully, we'll have some good solid ground.
Right. You know what's crazy? There was someone that came on earlier, and they were like, "So, do you think that these two token Arabs lend weight to you and credibility to your argument?" I mean, I'm not even going to get into a debate with that person or discussion. I simply banned the account because they're not trying to engage in good faith. They're simply trying to troll and undermine. It's propagandizing. I mean, it's crazy. I get called a token black when it's convenient by these white liberal leftists because I don't toe their narrative, and you guys are now suddenly token Arabs, which means you're not real Arabs. I just find that, you know, that they will, yeah, you guys are Arabs and you speak the language, and you've got some guy with some Italian sounding name that wants to undermine you. Yeah.
I love it when you say, "What credibility do you have to translate the Quran?" And I said, "What credibility Yusuf Ali or Shakir or Baktullah have to translate your Quran? They don't speak Arabic language. They were foreigners. At least my credibility is my mother tongue. I grew up speaking it."
Fair enough. And you grew up in that neighborhood, in that milieu amongst Muslims in Egypt. So yeah. So thank you. Yeah, very powerful. But yeah, so guys, thank you very much. This has been a great honor. It's been an education for sure. And yeah, I have a trip coming up soon. I need to travel to the east, and I'll come back. So then in 2 or 3 weeks would be fine. I've got intermittent travel and other things coming up. So yeah, but I'd love to have you back, and we'll prepare and advertise it. And I'll try not to mess up with my streaming. I think I know what I did wrong. So guys, but thank you. This has been amazing, an amazing education. I mean, two, really legends now. Yeah. So guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon. And God bless everyone. And I hope it's been an education. Spread the word. And thank you very much for the super chats. Much appreciated for the support. And please look up the books, buy the books, support Saint Murad. Go to his site, links in the description, I believe. Get his free copy, and of course Usama's books. Please support them as well. Get a copy. All right. Thank you guys. We'll call it a night, and God bless.